teammates. Well, I think he's got a couple of teammates in the second group, and he's just keeping out the way. He's hoping that that group behind you see the group behind it. They're only about 30 seconds. Comes back, and if they keep attacking each other, then it will come back. And surely there's there's a couple of teams in here that want to kind of press on. It looks like Astana want to kind of press on a little bit and try and kind of help Miguel Angel Lopez, but it all depends on the combinations here. Who's actually in this group? Who wants to keep the tempo high? Lysenko now comes to the front, but I still think there's not enough teams willing to commit here in this front group that this second group could come back to them.
Well, Astana certainly seem to be here in good number. Well picked, yes. Lysenko rolling through to try and keep that pace moving, but the group has bubbled up, hasn't it? There is our yellow jersey. Up alongside Steph Kras. Eddie Dunbar goes again, and this time Covey's following. So quite happy, as you say, Brian, to get involved in the racing, Covey. He's not just sitting in. Eddie Dunbar looking good today. Well, those of you who've been on a break, welcome back. This is our compact leading group of some 27 riders, I believe. The Irishman Eddie Dunbar for Ineos Grenadiers, the next of those to have a little dig at the front, because this group, rather than it's too big to work coherently together, Brian, isn't it, I guess? So they're attacking each other and trying to thin it down and see if they can stay away.
It's too big. Not everybody wants to ride, even in the small group of 7. There's a couple of riders not willing to ride as well, but Covey is isolated. We're going to have these attacks, but stop start, and Caruso now going here, and Lysenko following, and that's going to be the run in all the way in. We're going to have this, and then we get this second group. It's quite a sizable group, and I'm sure there's going to be a couple of sprinters in here. I'm sure that the likes of Dion Smith is going to be here, and okay, Simon Yates has showed us that he's on some good form, kind of opened up a little bit. But Bike Exchange, if Dion Smith is here, will maybe want to kind of bring all this back together. So for the moment, the fact that it's kind of stop-start, it isn't really kind of organised. I really do think that the second group, we're going to call it the bunch, are going to be closing in these final kind of 20 kilometres, and we might actually see this sprint finish after all.
Ineos Grenadiers, Brian, have got 5, if not 6 riders in there as well. Magnus Sheffield, the young American, was one of the riders closing down the last of the attacks we saw, so he's definitely in there. This is Damiano Caruso of Bahrain Victorious, and the Italian who finished second in last year's Giro d'Italia, of course, with that big, kind of career-topping ride, that Grand Tour last spring. And that is Magnus Sheffield, the youngster, the American, with the number 21 on his back. But look at our long line of the main peloton here as they chase this back. We're not getting any time gaps on our screen, but it's a tiny gap. You can see it visually if we were to just zoom out there. There it is. There's our...
Yeah, just look at the horizon. We just wait for the second group to come across, and they're not riding cohesively at the front here. There's a few teams willing to push on a little bit. As you say, Ineos have got numbers, and they'll put a rider up towards the front. Astana, they won't totally commit. Stan de Wolf is there for the team of AG2R Citroën. So I really do think there's enough time for these two groups to merge, and just look at the peloton behind. There is a concerted chase, and if this keeps up, then they'll catch this group in front.
Well, Simon Clark has been riding well the last 2 days, the Aussie, right up there on general classification. He is in that leading group in the colours of Israel Premier Tech, the white shoulders, blue base to the jersey. There's our yellow jersey, Covey again, moving dangerously with Pozzovivo at the back. But having said that, Brian, he was quite happy to get involved in chasing things down and move his way through, so maybe his rearward positioning is a tactical thing. He does seem to keep doing it. It's difficult to miss him in that jersey, though. I like your tactical reading that he's trying to hide. It makes sense, but of course, the further down the group you are, the more likely you are to get caught out by potential slippages and problems through corners, just like this. Just in front of him is Simon Yates, just recharging the leg batteries after his early attack, no doubt. 2 more gone clear by the looks of it. It's Caruso.
Yeah, it looks as if Kras is there for Lotto Soudal, but you can see that Lysenko wants to kind of bring this back because he is a danger man because he was up there in the general classification. But it's all attack stopping. No one team wants to kind of really grasp the front of this race, while the peloton are getting ever closer. There's not a lot that Covey can do in the yellow jersey. He came up to the front for a little bit there, followed a few moves. It kind of reminded everybody that it was there. He's better just kind of keeping out the way and let the teams battle against each other. We're getting some of the guys that are up there in the general classification, trying to kind of sneak away, and others are chasing each other. Let the other teams chase each other down, and save that little bit just in case you need it at some point. But yeah, I think Covey's doing the right thing. Just keep it. I'm just kind of trying to look behind. It's still holding this group to the peloton. I don't think it's coming down anything. It's still holding. It'll be interesting to see who is actually chasing at the front of the peloton.
Well, they are still going downhill at the moment. They'll be heading through La Malaha. And then they start a gentle rise. They've got about 4k, gently uphill. We'll be starting that imminently. And then that descent to the kicker to the finish. It is much these kind of roads all the way to the finish. And don't forget, as Brian mentioned, 250 metres to go, that right-hander. Ben O'Connor, once again, having to spend pennies, winding his way across gaps, not necessarily following the wheels, but he's a big, tall guy as well, so he would, you'd think, provide some nice shelter for someone on his wheel, but he seems to be out there by himself an awful lot. Another split.
Yeah, you can see, I think it looks like Sheffield there on the wheel, not willing to contribute, not willing to kind of push on a little bit. Ben O'Connor was there, it was Leonard Kamna. Still hoping that the camera bike will just move slightly to the right-hand side so that we can actually see the group behind. Doesn't look as if they are closing quickly. I still think they'll close, but look, it just kind of lulls again, and then they'll get their breath and maybe someone else will go. But while this is happening, that chasing group is going to get closer. But I'd be really interested to see who is chasing, who is in that group behind.
The German, Leonard Kamna of Bora Hansgrohe, has had a couple of digs now. He was in that one as well just then, marked by Michael Landa. And you're right, Brian, the sort of stockier, more powerfully built Ineos Grenadiers rider is Magnus Sheffield, the 19-year-old. I haven't seen too much of him. He is, of course, a new pro, still only 19 years of age, but powerfully built. I think he's going to be a useful engine for Ineos Grenadiers, by the looks of things. He's read the race well to get in there. We get a look at our defending champion in this race, Miguel Angel Lopez, wearing the number 1 for back in the Astana Kazakhstan team this year. And there we can see, got an indication of it. The second of the two Lotto Soudal riders is in there is Sylvain Moniquet, the Belgian, on the back. He's been chasing down a couple of those gaps. There are two Lotto Soudal riders in there too. The other one is Steph Kras. Mikel Landa on the front, being followed by it's a slightly wobbly picture, Brian, isn't it? I'm trying my best to see. I think that's Wout Poels on his wheel there, the tall, lanky figure of Wout Poels. Former Team Sky rider, of course. Now settled into what has been a very successful Bahrain victorious team over the last year.
Yeah, it's Landa at the frontier and Caruso in second place there.
There we go.
The next red jersey, a little bit further back, is Wout Poels.
Thank you.
Eddie Dunbar speaking on the radio. They want information. I think there'll be a lot of teams, maybe not knowing what they should do, and it does look as if he's got the information. He's got the confirmation that we're right. So this is what I was saying a little bit before. Other teams, and it's taken this long for them to decide. You get the numbers back. Do we ride? Don't we? And there's a few teams in this group that have to ride, but that communication has now come up. It's now come up to Team Ineos, and with 5 riders there, they have some numbers, and they don't want the other group to come back. They don't want any kind of sprinters to come back. But it does look as if there is 3 teams willing to ride Bahrain victorious, Astana, and Ineos Grenadiers. So they've got 5 riders towards the front. That could be enough to keep the peloton at bay, but it really depends on the chase of the peloton behind. But it has settled down now. This will kind of nullify any of the attacks, because the last thing you want, if you've got your leader in this front group and he's gaining, and maybe some of the other riders that are up there in the general classification, the last thing you want is someone kind of clipping off in the run in towards the finish. Maybe a Mikel Angel Lopez gaining some time, or Steph Kras gaining some time for Lotto. You don't want that. You don't want the attacks, because it's very difficult to control everything. So 3 teams willing to kind of ride in towards the finish, and then it's who's going to be the fastest. I think we might see someone kind of try to kind of clip off in the run in towards the finish. And I'm still looking down the back of this group to see who is actually in this leading group. We've mentioned quite a few of them, the general classification riders, but there's another rider from Quick Step just down the back there. We know that Van Sevenant is there. I'm not too sure. Is it Steimler, Peter Serre, maybe Stibar? But they're always in a race to win, and they'll try their best to try and win this stage today.
Well, this is interesting, watching Mikel Landa, the Spaniard, doing the work for Bahrain Victorious on the front here. Caruso, as Brian rightly says, on his wheel. Further back down the line there, we see Wout Poels. I'm trying to see, Brian, if Jack Haig is there. I think he is further down, about 5 or 6 riders from the back, just in front of Covey. Alessandro Covey once again sitting second from last wheel, alongside Domenico Pozzovivo. There he is. And there he is, the yellow jersey. I've watched him a couple of times. We've been looking at the aerial shots, Brian, just sort of letting little gaps go and making other riders chase around him at the back. So either he's riding very canny and maybe trying to make himself look weaker than he actually is. You might be right, he might be fancying this one at the finish, Covey. He's obviously in sparkling form, and I'm guessing when you're feeling like that, you feel capable of anything. 73 and 77, so you're right, Mauri Van Sevenant is in there, and it's Dries Devenens. Dries Devenens is the other Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl rider in there.
I think it is coming back now. Kerner riding, Eola Kometa riding as well. Euskaltel looks like one rider there from Alpecin. They don't have big numbers. It did look as if it was settled down. It still can come back together, but it's going to need a really concerted effort. And Girmay is there for Intermarché as well. So it's going to be close in the end, whether it all comes together. But it does look as if there is a bit of control at the front, but this chasing group is getting ever nearer to this front group now.
Yeah, and this is a very what should we say, general classification focused leading group, one that's distanced itself on an unclassified climb after we'd already gone over 4 categorised climbs of the day. It was chipping its way off the back of the Alto de Cassin, in between there and Huelma. These riders clipped off, and it wasn't just a sort of a chopping further down the peloton, it was a decisive attack actually, and in the end the final attack that made it happen and stick was that of Simon Yates, the British rider for the Australian Team Bike Exchange Jayco. There he is, the upright on the hook style of Simon Yates, about 10 riders back from the front there with the white sleeves.
Oh, it's getting closer, isn't it? It's getting closer. You can just see the whites of the eyes of the group behind, and it does look as if this could all come back together inside the last 5 kilometres.
That would change everything, Brian, wouldn't it, as well? Because all of a sudden, this group is now all about general classification and about thinking about putting in big gaps, or a gap on that second group anyway. If it comes back together, then we wipe the slate clean again and start again, because who's going to move up from behind, roll up that isn't here? I did think today would be a day where we might see Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl try and take the stranglehold of the race. That might yet still happen. Van Sevenant, we've just seen him closing up some gaps again in this group, so he's working hard.
Well, the thing for me, I think the favourite in this front group has to be Covey. I have to say that again. He sat there, he's got a good finisher, and he's had pretty much a free ride today. Okay, he's been isolated here, but he's now got Bahrain Victorious riding on the front, just looking behind. the thing for me is who is in this group behind. I know there's some teams that we mentioned, Cairn, they don't have an out-and-out sprinter. So who's actually in this the peloton behind that's able to sprint? Is Dion Smith there? Trentin Seneschal. We know that Germay for Intermarché is definitely there. Aldani for Alpecin. I'm sure that if Alpecin are riding it, he is there. So it does look as if it is going to come back together. But who is actually in this peloton that is capable of sprinting? But I still think that Covey could be doubling up with the form he's on at the moment.
Yeah. Well, that would be really impressive, wouldn't it? Let's see. He's deliberately, it's no doubt about it, he's obviously got the form. He is deliberately hugging those last 3 or 4 places in this leading group of, I still think it's 27 riders. He's there, and there he is. You can see the yellow jersey. Difficult to hide when you're wearing that. We're coming into the last 5 kilometres. We're on the outskirts of Otura, in the outskirts of Granada, the city itself, of course, which is why we're now becoming much more urban. Here we go, strung back out again. Fast roads now, and a slight rise. We're just about to come to the very gradual rise that takes us up to the finish. That's the 5k to go banner. It is still Mikel Landa of Bahrain victorious on the front. Damiano Caruso right there. I am pretty certain Jack Haig is further back, but he's tucked right in. There is Wout Poels. We're looking for the white jerseys with the light blue stripe on it. I think, Brian, yes, I think Jack Haig is about sort of 3/4 of the way down this group, hiding very well. And there's a look at the man who kicked it all off.
I think he is in this group. But this is another man that can finish well. It's not bad at sprinting in the past when he was a bit younger. But this, I just saw the flags there with 5 kilometres to go. A bit more of a kind of headwind, which means it will kind of foreshorten the gap. This is the chasing group now, as we kind of look up to the group in front. In fact, this is the front group. But yeah, it's 4 kilometres to go now. The bunch haven't got up at this moment stage. With 4 kilometres to go, I'd put my money on Covey winning this stage. But there's still time. They've stripped out the cars, so there's nothing in between. It does get a little bit kind of technical if you're kind of twisting turns all the way in towards the finish. But yeah, there's still time for this group to come up, but it's going to be very, very late in the day.
And watch out for Jefferson Cepeda, I think he's Ecuadorian rider actually, on the Caja Rural team.
I think Narvaez is there for Ineos as well, so it looks as if they're going to be setting something up for their rider.
So we are just outside 3k to go on this, the 3rd stage of the Ruta del Sol, the Vuelta Ciclista a Andalucia, in the sunshine, in the hottest part of Spain, and closing in on the finish in Otura on the outskirts of Granada. Eddie Dunbar, the Irishman, being used again by Ineos Grenadiers and seeking the shelter of our camera motorbike by the looks of it too. I think you're right, Brian. I think now, looking back, I still can't see the chasing peloton. This group look like they're going to survive. Oh,
yeah, it does
close.
I think, you see them bunching up now. You see that Landa and Caruso have done their job, but I think Ineos now taking it up with 3 kilometres to go, thinking of their Ecuadorian rider Narvaez. I don't think it's possible now for it to come back. There was a time there a few kilometres ago that it could have come back, but just looking at the peloton, with 3 kilometres to go, they kind of fanned across the road, so it does look as if because of a slip out there. It could have been Narvaez there. This puts the cat amongst the pigeons now.
It really does. And Alessandro Covi's made the split, Brian. As you said, I can see the yellow jersey. It's Rodriguez who was down in that too, and Narvaez, as you said. Now, look for the yellow jersey, because he'd made the split at the front end. They'll be very aware of what's happened around them. The yellow jersey is there in about 5th place. That's one of the Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl riders. Is that Van Sevenen that was very close to the front? We're looking at the blue jersey, white sleeves. He's got one of the Ineos Grenadiers riders with him.
Dries Devenijns. It's Dries Devenijns there. And look, the 3 kilometre rule was there, so there'll be no gaps in the general classification. This is about the stage now. The yellow jersey is there. It brings it down to about 12 riders. It looks as if De Wolf is there also for AG2R Citroën, so this makes it a little bit more interesting for the stage win now.
It certainly does. Magnus Sheffield still there as well and closing down gaps. Is that Leonard Kamner going again? This would be the point at which he would attack, you'd have thought. And I'm presuming...
Lysenko's trying to kind of close things. Sheffield is there as well, so if Kamner goes now, and it's going to open the door to a stage win for Bora Hansgrohe, but it looks as if it is all coming back together. But yeah, don't worry about the general classification. It was inside the last 3 kilometres. This is the challenge now for the stage win.
Magnus Sheffield looks strong. He's closing down that gap, the 19-year-old American, and not just closing it down, but bridging it to Leonard Kamner. Magnus Sheffield on the charge. He'd do well just to keep his head down and keep going at this stage. They've got just outside a kilometre to go. The American goes past a fading Leonard Kamner and digs on himself. Lysenko, I think it is, trying to close that gap down inside the final kilometre now by the looks of it. So our leading group is going to survive just to the line. The American, the youngster, Magnus Sheffield driving on. He can't afford to look back now because he's got the gap. A moment's hesitation behind him and that'll be it. Sheffield is going for this one. Wow.
19-year-old American rider. He's just looked around now. He's going for it, and it looks as if he's going to be taking this stage because I can't see anybody. Covey's there. We know he can sprint, but Ben O'Connor's just sitting there in second place there with De Wolf on the wheel. Nobody's going to take this up. They're leaving it to Astana at the front. I think it's Lysenko. It's not closing. It looks as if the young American is going to steal the day.
Wow, what a coming of age, Brian. If he can hold on, 19 years of age, and he looks like he's going to get a stage win in stage 3 of this Pro Series race. He's looking back, but he'd do well to get his head down and get on with it. Oh, wow. Once again, Miguel Angel Lopez is closing down on a lone leader. Lopez has got such good form, but he's left by himself right now. There's that tight right-hander. Magnus Sheffield lines up, and the young American is going to take a sterling stage win for the British team of Ineos Grenadiers. The 19-year-old bobbing away and desperately trying to hang on. He's going to do just that. Stein de Wolf also trying to kick from behind. And the remnants of a brilliant breakaway. Magnus Sheffield takes the win. What a fantastic victory for the youngster, 19 years of age, and he thumps his chest. Well, he might. Ben Turner looking to try and clean up the podium places too. A great day out for Ineos Grenadiers. And here comes the remnants. Would we call that the remnants? That's the remnants of our peloton, Brian, isn't it? Wow.
We're looking at Lenny Kamner on the left-hand side. He's absolutely spent there. But, Trenton coming up to take the bunch finish with Greg van Avermaet. But what a finish that was. Magnus Sheffield, we knew he was the next generation, a talented bike rider. And, what an effort. I don't think anybody was expecting it. He just found himself in the right place at the right time, had good legs and decided to go, and he went. And 19-year-old winning a race at this level, wow, what a start he's had for this year. And it's incredible to see.